There we go. So welcome to this fifth module of this universal perspective on unfolding of time and global convergent logic course. From now on, I'll just put UPUT and LGC. Yeah? The phrase takes about 10 minutes. So yeah, we are with this fifth module, and I think with this fifth module, we're going to kind of move into just another phase of the course. Yeah. Let me see, just a second. I'm gonna mute. Okay. Well, basically, up to this point, we've been kind of exposing what we could call I call it the logical fractal, or the logical structure. The logical structure. And I also call it a fractal because it's kind of like the universal fractal, or it is a way of representing this universal fractal. But now what we're going to do is position it, begin to move into a position in the location we have as humans within this space-time, okay? So this is kind of like the next movement where it's beginning to see this, taking this universal fractal and seeing it within our location, okay? And beginning to understand this position we have and probably begin to go into what it means to be a human, yeah, and to begin to see what purpose is there in this kind of human kingdom. And obviously, we can't understand it if we don't relate it to the position we have in the global universal system. Yeah, so. So that's why I think we're moving to a next step within this, yeah, which I think is very important, very important, very interesting, because if we can't begin to relate this very abstract model, we can say very abstract model, if we can't begin to relate it in our own expression in space-time, it's going to be like a kind of dissociation. And we have to begin to connect the abstract with the concrete and its expression in reality. Yeah. Good. So so let's begin with the stencil that we've seen, and the stencil that I'm going to like to put focus on today is the stencil I explained the previous module, okay? The ones with the 2 sevens and which creates this diamond kind of figure, and with this inverted triangle at the top, okay? Well, we're going to be looking into quite a few things, but let's start with what we were taking as this unfolded source, okay? This unfolded source, non-unfolded source, which we call this area the unconscious of nothingness, of emptiness, meaning that it is that source which has no separation, which is sustaining any possible separation, yeah? And then we establish the first separation, which is a non-linear separation. Yeah? It's where these 2 sevens have a separation, but the separation that it has, it's not in time, okay? It is a separation in the timeless, we could say. A way of seeing it is that from this unfolded source, the first thing that emerges is what we call the I, yeah, the jaw, or to see it in English, this kind of unity, non-unfolded unity, unfolds itself and it creates an I in the sense of consciousness, okay? So we could say this is the birth of consciousness. Always the way of seeing it is that consciousness is inherent to existence, meaning that we can't talk about anything that exists without consciousness. That, in the way that we're seeing, that is it's a misreading. Yeah. So in a way, we could say first we have the necessity of there being consciousness, and from that consciousness emerges existence. Yeah. It is still a way of explaining it because you know, I always, when we separate something, it's only a teaching tool, okay? And because existence and consciousness are just, they come together in a way, yeah. But if we had to put it in like a hierarchy, in a hierarchy in the sense that, you know, you can't have molecules without atoms in that way, but atoms and molecules coexist together. You can't have anything that exists without consciousness, okay? But consciousness and existence coexist together, yeah. Good. Now, this is what I also call, in a way, this is what I also call the multiverse, the multiverse here. Multiverse means many versions. The multi-universe is many possible versions of existence, of reality. Yeah. Why do I say it's this? Because here we have unfolded for there to be a, remember we called this nothingness, which is directly connected to this non-unfolded source, okay? But when it unfolds itself, we say, okay, nothingness or nothing or no thing, it has this todo or this totality, yeah? this receiver. Which, so it kind of has the separation of the principles of the male, which emits, and the female, which receives. Yeah? So now you see the female here, the receiving here is open to any possibility. Yeah, let's take it. It's like the moment the male and the female are beginning to have sex. Okay, so meaning that all the potentials, the woman is open to all the potentials that man has. Potentials, in this way, we could see it as spermatozoids, okay? All those potentials and all those purposes of existence. And it hasn't chosen any yet. So it's like a multiverse. It's in the sense that it's open to all the possibilities, okay? But there is no specific universe yet, in the sense that a universe is one version out of the multiverse. So first, there's this multiverse occurring, yeah. But then there is a selection, meaning that male, sorry, like this, remember I said this is like the testicles, this is like the penis, and then there is an ejaculation and there's a conception. Now, you see, when there's a conception, there's a selection. A conception, there's a selection. When there's a selection, that is when we go from a multiverse to a universe. Yeah. So because the universe is selecting one of those versions, and now it is wanting to give birth to that, meaning it gives birth to this reality. Okay? One, remember, one reality. We could call one is reality, and when there is a reality, there is a universe, because there's been a version that's been chosen. Okay. And that's where also when there's one of those versions have been chosen, you see the way that sex occurs, or the reproduction occurs, is a fractal of the way that the universe reproduces. It's more like the human way of expressing, but the way that it expresses is giving us the clues of how the whole kind of universe is doing it. Yeah. So now this reality, we could also call it the birth of space-time. Yeah. And here we do have something that before in the multiverse there wasn't. We have a process. We have a process. We have a past. We have a present, or a present that opens into past and future. Okay. So here we have reality. Could put it here, really, the reality. Yeah, I'm just going to put it here, not to. And what is reality? Reality is everything. Reality is where it is an expression already, so it's expressed. That's the difference between totality and everything, or reality. Totality, it's all potential, but when it's birth, it is everything. So it's everything. I mean everything. So it's individual births. It's individualities. It's vehicles. It's like material vehicles. It's biological in the sense of bio, like life, and the logic, which is moving at life. It's a biological vehicle. And reality is everything. So it's all those things creating a reality, which is expressing this chosen universe. Okay, there's one version chosen to express itself. Now, this is the thing also that I want to mention is that so basically what we're going to do in this module, we're going to go from the multiverse, the universe, and then we're going to begin to see how we are positioned, how these different systems are like the Russian dolls, okay, sustaining each other. Now, a multiverse and the universe coexist at the same time. But I'm not talking like there are many universes occurring simultaneously. I'm not interested in that way of seeing it. What I'm saying is that the universe is always renewing itself. Okay, so the universe is always renewing itself because it's connected to the multiple versions, which is always renewing. So constantly, this nothingness is ejaculating new potential. And the totality is receiving it, conceiving it, and opening it. So the universe is renewing itself because it's connected to the multiverse. Okay, so there's like the universe, the selected version is not fixed. It's selected, but it's not fixed. It's always open to renewal. Okay, so that's kind of what there's a dialogue. As you can see, remember I put this is the multiverse, but the multiverse is forming part of the universe. They are dialoguing. So all those non-selected versions are just postponed to the right moments where the feminine chooses that. Yeah? Which, by the way, the feminine is the one that chooses the version. Yeah, like the whole thing of it's a race of the spermatozoids, and we were the fastest one out of millions, and that is not really what happens. Actually, it's a collaboration between all of them. It's collaborating because the feminine already chose the one that wants to go there. So it's like they're helping the guy to get there. You know what I mean? It's not really the way that we see it, because the feminine chooses. Yeah, the masculine emits, but the feminine chooses. Yeah, good. Now, one thing I would also want to say is that when you see time, and time is the linear way of seeing this nonlinear relationship. What do I mean by that? We could say that nothingness and totality, or nada y todo, that makes up what we call consciousness. Okay, let's put it this way. So this is more like a male consciousness. This is more a female aspect of consciousness. But now when we look at time, time also has the same kind of characteristics as the masculine and feminine, but it has it in a linear way. So the past and the future, if you look at the past, what does the past allow? Yeah? And what does the future allow? The future is kind of like, it's like a linear nothingness. Can you see? It's like a nothingness, but in time. Why? Because the past, you can't see it, but it's always emitting new possibilities, but in time. Yeah. And then what is the past allowing? It's allowing all those possibilities that the future is emitting. The past gives it the ground. It gives it like the uterus for them to be born in the present. So we could say that the past is like the female, but in time. And the future is like the male, but in time. Nothingness is the male, but in the timeless, the non-linear. And totality is like the female, but in the timeless. So it's like if they, sometimes I used to put it like this, like when they unfold, yeah, when these two unfold, it's like kind of like that. Yeah, so nothingness has this characteristic of the future, and totality has this characteristic of the past, because the past is like all the things that we know, all the things that have been created, but receiving a future. So it's like this big uterus receiving a new version. Okay, this is going to be important later on when we talk about. So sometimes the way I put it is that nothingness is a non-linear male principle, totality is a non-linear female, past is a linear female, and the future is a linear male. Another way we could see it also is that nothingness is the male aspect of consciousness. Totality is the female aspect of consciousness. Consciousness, I, yo, okay? And what is the past? It is the female aspect of existence, of having a body, okay? So the past gives us a body. It gives us a body. The future renews that body. It gives a direction, it gives a purpose, and it renews its potential. It updates it in the present, okay? So we could say that this is providing existence, while this is more consciousness. But consciousness and existence. So what is existence? Existence is that which allows consciousness to expand. It gives a material vehicle for consciousness to expand, because it is opening. It's like you see the difference between light and what we call refracted light. Okay, it's something like that, because light, it's all the frequencies together. You know, it's all the frequencies together. But what is reality? It's opening it. It's opening it and seeing, wow, there's all these colors, and that has an order. So what happens is that when you open the light, you begin to expand its consciousness of itself, of what it already is. So that's why what existence is allowing is to expand the consciousness of nothingness and everything through no, sorry, of nothingness and totality through everything. Okay. This would be a universal fractal, this would be a universe system, a universal system, what we call a logical fractal, which is kind of like, it is a conversation that nothingness and totality is having through reality. And reality is through everything, every individual, every little, individuality. That individuality can be an atom, or it can be a planet, but it's talking through everything. Yeah. So if this is kind of clear, now what I would like to go to is, okay, but how does this universal fractal, because nothingness and everything, it's like very, it's very absolute, because that's what a universal fractal is. It's absolute. Yeah, it's an absolute view. It's an absolute structure. Now, what I want to do now is, how does this absolute structure begin to express itself into space-time? Okay, how does this absolute structure express itself into space-time? And what we are going to have, the next kind of system, so we have a multiverse, from where it sustains a universe, a universal system, which is the logical fractal and absolute. That's why we're talking about nothingness and totality, or we could say black, white, and gray. Okay, but it's like, it's absolute. You see, that's black is an absolute absence, and white is an absolute presence. And gray is it's like when they come together. Yeah. But now this is where this starts to become more connected to our experience. Yeah. So this allows a different type of system. Okay, another level, a systemic level, which I call a global system. Okay, from now on, I'm going to take away this. Okay, but just always know that that is always there. Okay, I'm just taking away because it's going to help the visual explanation of it. But understand that behind everything, we have the same non-unfolded source. Yeah, that is very important. Yeah, these two settings here, which are not separate. Okay, so meaning there's not even consciousness there. It's not even consciousness. You see, there's always like when people say, when I die, what's going to happen to me? Yeah, and some people say, well, they're still in life after existence, and that is true. Like, because there's still consciousness after existence. Yeah, it's just probably in a different format, we could say. There's still consciousness after existence, or maybe it just our body dies, but we still have the minerals, and there's consciousness in the mineral kingdom. Okay, and other people say, no, there's nothing. It's like there's not even consciousness and nothing, and that's also true. Yeah, because it just depends on the levels that they're seeing at. The thing is that this is probably hard for our brain, is that they are simultaneous. It's not like it's one, it's that they are simultaneously occurring. Like all the colors are occurring simultaneously in this light. You see? So that's probably something that it's hard to put our head around, because right now we are something existing in reality. We are, but at the same time, we are, there's another level of ourselves that we are pure consciousness, nothingness, in the sense a nothing, conscious nothing. But at the same time, there's another level of ourselves that it's not unfolded. There's no I. Okay. But these are like, and that's why it's called the unfoldment. It's different levels participating. And Yeah. So it's more non-linear. You see, it's more non-linear. It's not like, oh, we're in one place or the other, or it's kind of like together. You know. Good. So let's go with the global system. Now I'm just gonna. Are we good up to there? Up to there, we're good. Okay. No, just to move on to the next step. So what now the global system is, how does this express in the universe? And you see the same fractal, but expressed in the global system. Now we're talking about global, we're talking about globes, okay? And if we kind of see, okay, what is this universe mainly made out of? It's made out of astros. I'm not sure what you call it. Well, it's these celestial bodies, okay? These celestial bodies, basically, this is what we can see, okay? But these celestial bodies have an organization. And in these celestial bodies, there are two types of bodies that are very, very much significant, or we can see it all around in the universe, yeah? And it's what we call stars and planets. Mainly, those are the two most fundamental. If we can like organize in a you know, like systemically, what is the main category? It's stars and planets. Stars and planets. There's other things, but yeah, other things that are future possibilities of stars and planets, really. Yeah. So this is where, I'm just going to take this one to stop. What is going to take the place of nothingness, or let's say the male aspect? Yeah, it's going to be the star, isn't it? Because the star has got that emitting aspect. It's got that ejaculating aspect. Yeah, it's got that male aspect. So here, in this global system, here we're going to put a star. Now, the one that's more the receiving, which is receiving that solar flare, or that, you know, that ejaculation of the star, is the planet, or planets. Put planet for now. And what happens between, you know, when the star and the planet are like in this communication, and, you know, the star is doing this emission and the planet is receiving that, it begins to create a expression, a reality of things, okay, on that planet. So this is where we have what we could call, it's hard, we could call it the antennas, or the biological antennas and biological receivers. Now, you see these antennas or receivers are individualities which are part of a planet, okay? So, meaning it has a different level, a different systemic level. It's like, I am part of the planet. I am an antenna, a receiver of the planet, but I'm not a planet. So I have to see where I'm in the different systemic level, meaning the planet can live without me, but I can't live without the planet. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the thing. It's out of the father and the mother, we have children, okay? And we get children out of it. Now, the children have the genetic pool of both. You know, it's like they have both there. And these antennas, receivers, are not only just living beings, not only just what we call the living biological, it's also the inorganic and what they call it, inert. That is also an antenna. Okay, it's also an antenna. It's a non-living one, but it's also an antenna. This is something, I'm not going to get too much in it, but the fact that it isn't living in the sense that it isn't a living being in the way that we know it, that it reproduces itself, it doesn't mean that it's absent of consciousness. That's something I'm very clear. There is consciousness in everything that exists. The thing is that there are different expressions of consciousness, but there's consciousness behind everything that exists. Okay, maybe it's not self-conscious consciousness, but there's consciousness. So this is something that definitely, it's not like something that has no consciousness in the universe suddenly produces this one kind of strange animal that has consciousness. Okay, that is a reduction where it's saying that if it doesn't fulfill the characteristics of human consciousness, it has no consciousness. Okay, that's a reductionism. Okay, we are a level of refinement of that consciousness, but it's not like, okay, because we come from inorganic matter. So there must be consciousness there, and we're just a refinement of it. Okay, so star, planet. Now, you see, something is that the star and the planet, and the star is getting its, where is it getting its potential, its power to emit, yeah? From this non-unfolded source, yeah? So it's like this non-unfolded source, which we could put in the center, in the heart of the star, is from where, it has this emission. Now, remember I said that, there was a relationship between nothingness and the future, and totality in the past. This is where, like, what is the past? Yeah. Well, first of all, what is time? Time is a relationship between stars and planets, isn't it? It's like you can't really understand time if there's no relationship between the celestial bodies, because we know that there's time because of this relationship that the Earth and the star and the sun has. That's how we know that a day's gone. So time basically is that so it's that relationship. Now, what I want to state here is that this here, the 7-7, the star planet, that we could say is that is where it's the consciousness of the star and the consciousness of the planet in relationship. And that is instantaneous, that consciousness. Now, here, what is the past, we could say, and what is the future? So this is more like, we could say, the lineal sun, or let's put it more simple, the physical sun. And this, we could say, it's the physical Earth. And so, like, you seeing the sun, you're seeing the physical sun, but that sun has consciousness, okay? That consciousness is, it's like what happens with us. You see me, you see a body, but the consciousness, you can't really see it. You know what I mean? The consciousness, you can't really see it. So we could say that the time here, the physical relationship, is what's expanding the consciousness of the sun and the star. Well, I put Earth here. I went too fast. Planet. For now, let's put it more star. Okay. And why, like, when you see this, the sun is the future of Earth. Okay? It's pretty obvious, isn't it? So the sun is emitting something, and then after the Earth processes that, and in the present, they come together and they create something. Yeah? You see that? So, but what is the Earth or the sun? It's the possibility of opening what it has. So the sun is emitting light. Light has all the frequencies together, let's say. What does the Earth do? It receives it, it opens it, and it expresses one of those possibilities. Like, in the plants, and that the plants, they receive and they install like a frequency level of the sun. So really what a plant is, it's an expression of the sun with the earth. Yeah. The thing is that what is the earth? What is the earth? Or what are the planets? The planets are just expressions of the sun. Because at one point it is all one thing. And then the nebulosa, the nebulous, condensed, it creates like gravitational concentration, which has a lot of heat, and then it explodes. And then that which explodes starts to come together and form planets. So what I'm saying is that it's an unfoldment. So the nebulosa, is this. It's kind of like this. It's like a non-unfolded, but then it creates together with the condensation and gravity and all that. It creates a star, a planetary star system. You see what you see? So it has the same expression. It has the same. It expresses the same fractal. Okay, expresses the same fractal, and a planet is just an aspect of the sun, but unfolded. And we'll get into the system that we're living in. But can you see this, guys? Can you see that it's the same thing, but it's unfolded itself? Why? Because it wants to see itself. It wants to know itself. So it creates an unfoldment of itself. Good. So can you see that? What is the antennas here and the receivers? They are communicating with the consciousness of the sun and the planet, but also maturing the existence aspect, you see? So that's why we have the existent aspect of the sun, of the star and the earth, and the consciousness aspect. So, the sun is not just emitting energy. Okay, energy it's just like the material expression of aspects of its consciousness. So behind energy, there's consciousness. That was very important. That's very, very important. Energy is not the key mover. You see, the way that we see the universe, it's all about having energy. It's not about that. It's about consciousness. Energy is a way of relating levels of consciousness. So that's why I'm a clear distinction that this is not about energy. Because if you see the way that astrophysics, they see it's all about which animal can get more energy. It's not, it's which animal can process more consciousness. Okay? So it's a different way of seeing it. It's a different way of seeing it. So, and this is what I call a global system. Now, a global system is still very generic, isn't it? Because stars and now let's go more into our planetary solar system. And that's where we're going to talk about the sun, and we're going to talk about Earth in its consciousness and in its existence. You see? And here we have, in this case, we're choosing planet Earth. Why are we choosing planet Earth? Because it's the planet we live in. But the sun is having a conversation with all the planets of its system, isn't it? We'll look into that now. But what I want to see is that why am I choosing Earth here? Because basically, we are antennas of the Earth. We are antenna receivers of the Earth. In this case, we are a specific type of antenna receiver of the Earth. A specific type. We'll see that also in a moment, but we are kind of like a solar connector. And it's not just about physical chemistry and physics. Okay, it's not only that is an expression of it, but it's about consciousness. It's about the sun is getting to know itself. It's expanding its awareness through its planets. Yeah. So that's why when we see it only in the material expression, in the way that science puts it, which is really interesting, but there's something missing there. There's something that doesn't work. At least it happens to me. It doesn't. There's an area that I notice that you're talking about existence in the absence of consciousness. So what do I do when I listen to those things? I put the aspect of consciousness in it, and that's what warms me inside, because the aspect of consciousness saying, thanks for recognizing my participation in this. It's not just about objects coming together, and, chemistry and physics, which of course has its role. It's about consciousness. And this is something very, very important. So consciousness is inherent to existence, meaning that anything that exists has consciousness. Important, because I think if you don't open to that level, something inside, that's why I say that in Spanish, ciencia in Spanish is science, and conciencia is consciousness. And what does con mean? Con means with. It's con with. And what is the con? What is the with? It is with the eye. Science, which is beautiful, but if it's disconnected from consciousness, it becomes ugly, or it loses a power in it. Yeah. And I think the scientists that transmitted a lot of power, or a lot of, with their being more correct or less correct, but the ones that, you could feel a strength in their communications, are the ones that took into consideration consciousness, and they explained it in a scientific way, okay? And it has a strength. But when you have these scientists which just kind of because consciousness is a big scientific problem, they don't know how to explain it, and they just say, okay, it's not necessary. It's like, well, you can notice when they're explaining, there's like a level, there's no power in it. It's like it doesn't connect, because there's, they're leaving out the eye. They're leaving out that aspect there. And who has taken care of this consciousness aspect? Mysticism and religion and spirituality and all that. But you see, it's like they took care of it in a way, because you can't just stay in a kind of, you can't expect only to have the scientific, cold view. It's not going to warm the soul, is it? It's just not going to do it. It's going to be a lack. Well, somebody's going to take care of that lack. The issue is that what this is trying to do is saying, no, it's not separate, eh? It's not a separate thing. It's not a separate process. It's not like mysticism takes care of this and science takes care of this. The thing is that it is a multi-dimensional connection. And I'm not sure if you remember, I said, what we're trying to establish with this is a multi-dimensional science. A multi-dimensional science where we are taking into consideration the invisible, consciousness. We're taking into consideration the invisible. And it is expressing in the visible. So there's no dissociation, because one of the big dissociations with religion is saying, well, one thing is saying that this is all shit, existence is just, it's like you made sins and you're here and this is like a punishment, and try and leave this place to go to this fairy tale, blah, 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 okay? For me, that established this disconnect, and I think we're trying to see that no. It's just dimensional areas of the same reality. Dimensional areas of the same reality. And well, Alejandra calls that kind of system of this dissociation of the physical and we could say of the consciousness. She calls it like the mystical infection. She calls it the mystical infection. It's like there's something in us that has in very deep down, which we are beginning to vomit it out because it's the moment to vomit it out, which is it's this dissociation. It's this we feel like there's this independence of the abstract and the concrete, and no, the interdependent. It's different dimensions of the same thing. It's like different light spectrums of the same light. And there's a logic which connects them. You know, it's not fairy tale stuff. There's a logic which connects all these things together. And this creating this heaven and earth thing, you know, as different worlds is, I think that causes a schism, you know. And it's like when you die, you can go to this beautiful place when you die, you know, you go to the beautiful, like if the abstract was disconnected, you see, so the abstract is just a dimension of reality. And the concrete is just a dimension of reality. But they're all connected with reality. Yeah? So this is something that that's why we have to take into consideration stars, planets, okay? Because it's an expression of this consciousness. Good. So can you guys kind of follow up to here? So we are individual antennas, which we are establishing a link, we could say, with the lineal aspect of the sun and the earth. Let's call it the physical aspect, if you want. And also, we are linking with its interdimensional with its consciousness, you see. Both of the sun and the planet. And we're doing that in each present moment. All antennas, like we will see the different levels of antennas that we have on this planet Earth, okay? And we could see the function of all of them and the evolution, and the human is just one level of those antennas, yeah, of those antenna receivers. So I'm not sure if probably take like a 5-minute break, okay? And only if you have any questions or anything you would like to share about what we have explained here in order to move on, if it's kind of clear. Excellent. Okay, guys. So 5 minutes just to breathe in, and we will come back. Remember to tell me, remind me about the recording, okay? Thank you. There. Okay, so back with the second part. In this kind of logical fractal, absolute fractal, if you want, and the way that it expresses itself in the systemic levels, universal systemic level. The next one will be this kind of global systemic level, meaning it is like the relationships that, remember I said that reality is a relationship that nothingness is having through totality, nothingness with totality through everything, yeah? And this also is expressed in the relationship that stars are having with the planets and all the antenna receivers, yeah? all all the aspects that are born between them. But also in a different level, we can also see it. We can also see this in a family unit. Like a family unit is the same. The structure of a family unit, isn't it? There's normally there's a father, a mother, and a son, or a male, a female, and a male aspect, a female aspect, and this kind of thing that is growing between them. Yeah. That's why, you know, that I think that hierarchy must be respected, not in the sense that there has to be a mother, it has to be a father, it has to be, you know, there can't be two fathers. I'm saying that kind of, you know, that female-male aspects containing a life is important. And there's something in this kind of, you know, this gender movement that I don't feel it is it's not understanding this. It's not understanding this. And it's not about women and men. It's about female and male positions are different positions. And they are legitimate positions. They don't have to... A female must recognize its potential, not trying to be a male. Because it's going to confuse its position. It's going to confuse its strength. It's, you know, it has to know its position. It's like a emitter and a receiver for communication. They have to know their position. So there's something about confusing that I think is distorting this kind of underground, trying to distort, because it's not going to be able to be done, but it's distorting the interpretation of this fundamental hierarchy, this fundamental relational structure beneath things. Yeah. And it's not, again, it's not about, you can have men that are more female in the house. It's not about obviously there's a tendency where the male principle is expressed through men and the female is expressed through women, but it's not that, you know, obvious sometimes. That is true, but, you know, trying to you see, this is the thing about the women have never lost their potential. They give birth to babies. It's like, do you understand the potential that is? And they're trying to, and it's like they think it's all about going to work and all that, you know, it's like confusing the roles. And it's not about going to work or not going to work. I'm saying the potential of the female is to recognize its legitimate, powerful position. It's not about trying to be a male, you know. So there's some confusion going on there. I feel, and that you know, it will order itself. It will order itself, but there's some confusion on there. So yeah, you have the, you know, the consciousness of the father, the consciousness of the mother, with its existence creates a baby, isn't it? And the level of consciousness is going to determine at least the containment of that baby. And sometimes great expansion comes out of great limitation also. So, you know. Good. So there's one thing I wanted to put, because this is seeing it as the relationship of once with this star, a star with one planet, okay? But if we see it in, I would also like to put this image of the whole system. Let me share this with you. Okay. Can you guys see that? Oh, it's a bit small. Can you see that? Yeah? Okay. Now, that is this family of our solar system. Yeah? So each sun creates its system. And this is our little family here. Which is this solar system within this galaxy, yeah, this Milky Way galaxy, which has other different suns, and those suns are linking with each other. Okay, they are like neurons in the universe. Yeah, okay, but not to go so galactic, let's just kind of keep it to our family for now. If you can see, we have the sun, and then we have 9 planets. I know that science now is saying that Pluto is not a planet, 8, but we're going to take 9, okay? What I want you to see in that way of seeing it, we have sun, let's put it as 0, okay? And then we have each planet, 9 planets. Probably this is one of the reasons why we have a decimal system, we have 10 fingers. I believe that it has to do with these kind of 10 elements, yeah? Because what is 10? It's 1 and a 0, yeah? So it's the base creation. So you see, we've got these 9 planets, and you see that the first planet is the one that's closest to the sun, and you get further on, and there's kind of like a speed also. The closest there are, the faster it goes normally, and this temperature aspect. So what is planets? It's just different temperatures of the sun. It's like cool down aspects of the sun. And this is creating the system, and this system has a solar consciousness. So the solar consciousness is like an nothingness through that sun, okay? Because at the end, it's the consciousness of nothingness, yeah, through everything. But now we want to see it in our position in space-time, okay? So you see, each planet is going to have like a frequency of reception, isn't it? So like the first planet that receives the emission of the sun is Mercury, so it's going to receive that first hit. Then it's going to be Venus, then it's going to be Earth, okay? So Earth is the 3rd planet, okay? Then we have Mars, and then we have those 4 planets there, which are the inner planets. Can you see that there's an asteroid belt there? Isn't that like a membrane between 4 and 5? Remember? That 4 and then 5, and there's a membrane that divides kind of like the more personal impersonal, or the more concrete and the more abstract. And there's that asteroid belt creating that kind of division there, yeah? And then the rest of the planets are more the outer planets, which are more gas-like, more abstract. And then we have Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, yeah? So let's concentrate on Earth here, because it's also good to see Earth in this big scale. And Earth is planet 3, isn't it? It's receiving like on the 3rd level, yeah. But it is, you see, there's beyond the Earth, the sun is still emitting. So the sun reaches up to Pluto, yeah. Well, really, it reaches up to the hydrogen belt, which we'll see now also. And you'll see why this is important, okay? Just in a second. So, so Earth receives up to 3 in positive. It means it sees it coming, but it doesn't see the other 6 emissions. So that's a negative, because the Earth is not only establishing a conversation with the sun, it's establishing a conversation with all the planets, okay? So it's receiving from the sun in 3, and it has 6 in negative, okay? So 3, 6, and which is the code of Hungary. I always remember Piroska, 3, 6. And what is connecting this positive in 3 and negative in 6 is it's going to be plane 5. Plane 5. What plane 5 is? It links all the dimensions. Yeah, we will see this later on when we look at the numbers. Like, it's the center of the calculator, so it links all the dimensions. It's like the connective tissue kind of. It's the logic which links them all together. 8 is the one that interconnects, but it's a logic which links them all together. So This 365, which makes up a year, and a year is, you know, the time that it takes, the amount of turns the Earth does to go around the sun, yeah, has to do also with this relationship with the planetary solar system. It has to do with this receiving in 3 in positive, 6 in negative, so it doesn't see it, and 5 is what is connecting the positive. It's like linking, it's a logic which links the positive and the negative. So what is a year? A year is 365 days. What is a day? It's the rotation of the Earth around its own axis. And what is it doing there? It's having a full conversation with the sun and all its planets. Okay? So a year is like, sometimes I put it this way, we could say that we're watching a series, okay? This Netflix series is called Solar System Evolution. Solar System Evolution, okay? It's probably the best series in Netflix. And it is divided into chapters, and those chapters into seasons, okay? We could say that the chapter, let's just say it's a year, and the season is 4 years, okay? So we will see this more in the next modules, all right? But there is something very significant about a year, about, you know, going around the sun. There's something very significant about that. It's not just, wow, how matter kind of, it's not physical, only physics and chemistry. And, you know, there's something, it's also about an assimilation of consciousness. It's also about assimilation of consciousness, okay? So, the position of Earth. Another way of seeing it, I also wanted to put this, is, okay, I'm gonna put another picture now. Let me change it. And it's this one. Can you guys see that? Did it change? No. Okay, so I have to get out, stop share here. This one. There, okay. Now, if you see, now that is like the whole kind of, like if it's the bubble of the planetary solar system, yeah? I'll put another image of it, but you got the planets there, got the asteroid belt. And then in the exterior of that bubble, you have what has been recently found as this hydrogen wall, okay? And this hydrogen wall, what it does, it divides this bubble of our family. It is like the membrane, and from the interstellar medium. So the interstellar medium is the space between the other bubble, the other family. Yeah. Now, now let's look at this as a cell. Okay, it has the same structure of a cell. A cell has probably as an atom, but I would like to see it as a cell. The cell has this nucleus, okay, and then it has this membrane. Let me put the image of a cell. That's going to help you guys. Simplified cell is one, but no. Let me see. Share. Where did I put it? There. Is it this one? Okay, you see that because the cell is the base structure of a living being, isn't it? Now, I want to also show that there's this kind of like fractal occurring also. And it's this fractal of this nucleus, this membrane, and something that is connecting the nucleus with the membrane, okay? The membrane of something is what's giving it its separation. It's separation from something that's got inside, from something that is outside, okay? So this membrane is a connector from the outside and the inside. You see that? Now, the nucleus is like, let's say it is the sun of the cell in a way, okay? So it's like the sun of the cell. It's like the heart of it, the sun of the cell. And then you have in the, let me put it bigger. Then you have this intermediate aspect, which is the cytoplasm. Yeah. So this, why? Because the thing is that our solar system has the same structure. It has the sun, it has a membrane, which is this hydrogen wall, okay? And then it has in the cytoplasm, in the cells, you find these organelles, like organelles. Organelles have different functions for the cell to work. And the membrane, through the organelles, is having a dialogue with the nucleus. And then the nucleus gives information to the organelles for the membrane to express, and in the membrane you have receptors, okay? Hopefully I'm not getting too complicated here, but it's very simple because our solar systems work in the same way. It's like this bubble, like the cell, this huge cell, which has this hydrogen wall, which is like this membrane, okay? And then it's got, and what are the organelles? It's the planets. And so the planets are, so from the membrane, we are receiving information from the interstellar media, so from other solar systems and so on. And we are processing it in all the planets, and we are communicating with the sun. And then the sun is emitting, so there's a feedback. Like a cell is having a feedback between what's outside of it and the translation the membrane is doing through the organelles to the nucleus. And from the nucleus, it gives a response, okay? So everything goes to the nucleus, and everything, and all the external information goes to the nucleus, and from the nucleus, it emanates a response. So it's a communication system. It's receiving and emitting. Can you guys see that? Okay, now, one thing I wanted to say is that Earth is one of the organelles, okay? And it's also, I said the 365, and that is from the point of view of the sun. But if we look from outer exosystem, out of it, the Earth is the seventh, it's the seventh, you see? Because the Earth is receiving in 3 from the sun, but from the interstellar medium, from out there, it's receiving in 7. Can you guys see that? It's the 7th planet from outside. So that where it's receiving from the membrane. What is responsible? What gets in? What gets out? Okay, so if you see in biology, the membrane is what we call semi-permeable, okay? Semi-permeable means that it has this system of recognizing what is a nutrient and what is not a nutrient for that cell. So the hydrogen wall is kind of doing that with the communication with the other suns, okay, the other stars within this galaxy and intergalactic. Now, and it's a communication of nothingness through everything. Okay, so it's consciousness through a matter existence. Okay, so what you see from the outside, you have Pluto. You see, it's like and this from the outside, the 7th reception is Earth. Can you guys see that? Let me put the stop share. Let me put this one here. Okay, you see? Now, if you count from Pluto, now you're receiving from the hydrogen belt, and that is coming in, and we're not only receiving from the sun, we'll also communicate what the membrane is receiving from what outside to the sun. And when it receives the Earth, it's the seventh planet. Can you see? It's first Pluto, then Neptune, then Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, and then the Earth. Can you see that? So 3, 7. Now, this is important. This is important. 3, 7. 3, 6, 5 is also very important, but 3, 7 is also very important for us. First, 3, plane 3. 3 is the neurological perception. Okay? The neurological perception. That's why it's kind of like it's like that's so important to us here. The neurological perception. It's like very important. Yeah? Because that's the function we're doing in this family. But also it's very important for us, the 7. And what is 7? It's like absolute connectivity. It's like connecting with the absolute aspect in 7. It's like the vision of the whole. Now, which code in planet Earth, which telephone code, and I know that a lot of you guys are not really familiar with this, but again, I'll be explaining this in the following module, but which telephone code has 3, 7 on the planet Earth? The Vatican. The Vatican is 3, 7. It's 379. There's a 9 also there because it's the purpose outside, but it's 3, 7. Okay, 3, 7. So 3, 7 is like really important. Okay, and look at the level of consciousness that is using that frequency. So there's an interference. Okay, like there's an interference there. So in one of the most important centers for the humans on Earth, we have the Vatican with its level of consciousness. So that's an interference. So meaning that there is an interference going on. Okay? Now, not to get to, conspiracy theory and all that, the interference is a collaboration. It's a mechanism of space-time. What does interference do? Interference is something that matures us quickly. Okay? Something that matures us quickly, an interference. It's something that is not organic, but expands our organic evolution. It can end in self-destruction, but the membrane of the planetary solar system has received an interference, basically. It's received an interference from some other solar emission, okay? And that interference is expressed in our little planet Earth, okay? In the Vatican, specifically. So because an interference, if it wants to dominate, it's going to dominate the most important function of each thing, isn't it? Okay. So there is this interference. Probably I'll talk more about it, but basically an interference, what it's doing is it's like a disconnect with our totality. And it has different levels. One of them is the mystical kind of interference, this kind of separating the abstract and the concrete with a story. But and it creates a kind of where you become self-destructive to the organism in which you are participating with. Okay. But the interference is not something, okay, when I am explaining it, I have to call it interference because it is. It's an interference. But it's not a mistake. It's not something done by, baddie, and the goodies have to win. No. Interference is a mechanism of space-time to accelerate an evolutionary process. Let me give you an example. It's like, sometimes people who have grown in consciousness a lot very quickly is because they went through a very big interference in their life, okay? And in some way, sort of, some form. So they went through an interference, and that interference could have self-destructed them, but some way they were, instead of the interference using them, they were able to use the interference. So the thing with the interference is including it as a function in space-time to expand and to expand an evolution. But we have to call it by its name. You know, it is an interference. Yeah? So trying to think of some like specific example. I can see it in my own life how interferences, which was things that were occurring which didn't respect the organic kind of process of my life, which came, you know, as a whack, as an interference, as a external, look, this is the interference. This is, if I could sum it up, it's not an external communication, it's an external domination. So something outside is trying to dominate something, okay? Because the organic thing of space-time is communication. Why do I say it's organic? Because it's the same entity, it's the same consciousness. So the interference is when there's a disconnect and it begins to dominate, it wants to dominate, okay? Now, again, that is not the organic in the sense, like organic in the sense of like it lacks in coherency. That's why it's an interference, because the coherency is we're all the same thing. So why don't what we're doing in the separation is communicating, not dominating. You know? Okay, but there's interference that are installed, and that interference creates a tension, it creates a conflict, it creates an intensified problem, which allows us to pay attention and to kind of force to grow. It's like we're forced to grow, we're forced to mature, we're forced to, you know, okay? So it's just a mechanism of acceleration of evolution, okay? So we are part of that interference, because if you're not part of the problem, you can't be part of the solution. So that's the thing. The interference is not like a family. The family is just expressing an interference. Family, you know, like the Illuminati kind of looking at things. You know, it's like, oh, it's this family, it's this alien race. No, it's a mechanism that they are expressing. It's a mechanism of space-time that they're not the owners of that, just that interference. They are then in Spanish there's a good word called portadores. You know, it's not that they are not the owners, they are portadores, they are carrying it, okay? Because they are carrying it to the level where that interference has to impact, because it's impacting in all the levels, yeah? In the human level, we're kind of seeing how the interference works, yeah? It's also an interference is when 4 identity tries to become 7. That's also the interference. When 4 an identity or a model, yeah, a design wants to become totality. It's like, and this is very much expressed in the human kingdom very strongly. Like it's like this confusing of, we think that the human design is the owner has to dominate the planet. No, the planet is using you as a human. This is how the earth expresses this interference. It's like the earth, we see the earth as our resource, okay? So the global aspect is the resource of us, of a relative aspect of it. But it's the other way around. The organic thing to see is, no, we are a resource of the earth. You see, that's the organic way of saying the interference is the other way around. Okay, so I'm trying to give you the definitions of this interference, how it works. But also it has a great potential. Interference has a great potential. It is true that it can end in self-destruction, but all jumps in evolution go through the threshold of I can expand or I can self-destruct. Okay, and it's just how it works. So to not translate this in, you know, we have to fight against some enemy. No, and the interference is dismantled from within out. That is very, very clear. Like somebody put this phrase, and I think it's beautifully put. The dismantlement of the interference is the self-dismantlement. Dismantle, you know what a dismantle is? To dismantle, to undo. Okay? So the dismantlement of the interference is the self-dismantlement. So it is something we are undoing from within ourselves. We're not undoing out there. Then we can express it out there. But you see, is there a distinction between interference and adversity? For me, the interference is a resource, it's a mechanism that creates great adversity. So we could say that interference is like interference is what creates great adversity. Yeah, in order to create a potential of expansion. So there is a distinction, but they're very related, very, very related. Yeah. So that's where we begin to love interference, because we see that it's a bridge. Yeah. The interference becomes a bridge. That's where we can love it, but we do have to register it. You know, to say that it has a purpose, it doesn't mean that we call it something else than what it is. It's an interference. And we have to be clear about it. It's like the conception that humans, that the earth is a resource of humans, that is an interference. That is not coherent. That's just not coherent. So, but we are learning very quickly that we can't continue with this way of seeing the earth. And it's so our look what the interference is doing. Our self-consciousness of our relationship with earth is growing as fast as the interference is eating the earth. So there's going to be a threshold where it's going to end up in a self-awareness of a recognition that we are an expression of this global consciousness called earth. Yeah. So, and this is the earth, the sun has accepted the entry of this interference. So it's like it's accepted it because it recognized that it was going to create adversity, great adversity, but that adversity was going to create the perfect storm for a possibility of expansion of consciousness, because the sun or the space-time is not interested in everything going well. Okay, it's not like interested in that. It's interested in expanding its possibilities. So to expand its possibilities of consciousness, it needs these interferences. Okay, so it's a mechanism. So the interference is a mechanism that the origin itself is. So sometimes I say that if you have to put the blame on, you know, the blame on which is the source of the interference, you have to blame nothingness. Okay, because it's a mechanism that emerged out of the origin. Okay, so this understood, are we good here? Look, let me put another image that apparently this is how they see that the solar system would be seen from outside. You can see that kind of like cell bubble look it has. Let me see. Can you guys see that? Oh yeah, you can see that, can't you? That bubble, or no? Oh no, you can't. I have to stop share, and I have to put another share. This. Apparently, this is kind of like what they see it could kind of look. You see that kind of red? That's where the emanation of the sun reaches. And then that kind of like that wall is a hydrogen wall, okay? And it's in communication with, it's like a cell in the universe, basically. Yeah. And it's communicating with other cells. And it's receiving, so like the growth of that cell also is happening not only inside of it, you see, also outside of it. So that's why I also put the 7th position for Earth, because from the outside, Earth is the 7th planet. It's not the 3rd. But so seeing it from the nucleus, it's the 3rd. And when you see it from one direction and the other, you have 37 there. Okay. So and the 36, 37, like important. And okay, I'm not going to go more into all that stuff. So now let's look at our Earth. I'm going to send these pictures to you guys to have. So I'll be sending all these so you can have them. Let me show you the structure of the Earth, and you see that it's also got this cell structure. And there you see, okay, the Earth, and then it's got this, it says the inner core, outer core, but well, in Spanish it's the nucleus. It's called the nucleus, okay? So the nucleus in the center of the Earth, okay, I'll put it now, but that is kind of like, we could say the central position of its consciousness, okay, of its like global consciousness in the center of Earth. And then it has the membrane, okay, and what does the cell have on the membrane? If we see a cell, it has receptors. What are the receptors of the membrane doing? They're receiving things outside and they're communicating it to the center of the nucleus of the cell. Are you guys kind of clear with this? Like, I think if I can. So if you understand the cell, you understand, it's giving you a good picture, probably not, you know, obviously the solar system family, the bubble, let's call it, it's got a much greater complexity, of course, yeah, but it is got the same kind of structure, you know, behind it. So if you see this, like the cell, the nucleus, okay, and then we have the organelles, okay, and then here we have receptors or antennas, kind of like antennas. So it's reading its environment and saying, okay, this comes in and it sends it to the nucleus, it's informing it, and this processes it and gives it an answer back to the receptor. And it creates an action. Okay, so there's this feedback between the environment and this nucleus of the cell. Okay, and the environment, well, it's related with many things, isn't it? Well, Earth has got a very similar structure. It's got this nucleus, okay, and it's got these receivers in the membrane. These receivers, living beings and organic and non-organic beings in the membrane. Okay, and then it has this intermediate aspect, which, you know, it's very big, but basically it must have some, you know, elements that are communicating this central consciousness with the antennas. And then we have the sun, which is one of the big emitters in the environment, isn't it? So, and then we have, so we receive it as the third planet. And we have an atmosphere also because we can't, it's a semi-permeable membrane, remember, semi-permeable, meaning we can't receive all the frequencies of the sun. It's too intense for the Earth to receive it. So it selects, and the rest it just says, okay, I can't deal with this. I'll leave it for the others. Yeah. Good. So what do we do? We're doing something very similar than a receptor, a cellular receptor. We are receiving this, not only energy, yeah, we're receiving this packet of consciousness, and we are processing it, or sorry, we are processing and we are capturing it, and we, in a way, consciously or unconsciously, sending this here. And this is kind of, okay, so it receives it, the one that processes it is the central consciousness, and this is, okay, and it's like the sun activates something in the center, and it, like, remember the female receiver? It receives new versions and activates new versions. So it's this uterus, okay? So the Earth is like this uterus and is receiving, and it is renewing new potentials of the Earth according to in which season and chapter it is in its relationship with this Netflix super production, much better than Game of Thrones, called the evolution of the solar system, planetary solar system. Change the image to the south. Ah, okay, sorry. Yeah, true, sorry. So, can you guys see this? So what the cell gives us a good analogy, you know, to see how this is working. So, the human, what is the human doing? Like, the human is one of the kingdoms on this membrane. Okay. Well, first of all, we're on the membrane. Okay. We are in the membrane, basically. And we are kind of like connecting the outside of this organism with the inside of this organism. So we're doing like this receiving function between the sun mainly, but also between the other planets. So like basically we're having a family conversation going on, you know. And we could say that, you know what, when you think like, why do they always make songs about love, you know? The thing is that love, or when it's, you know, my dear and blah, 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 obviously not from the greatest level of consciousness, but it is kind of, why is it so deeply important? Because it's about the basic relationship of the universe, which is male, female, sun, male, female, sun, male, female, sun. So male, female is basically like a planet and a star having a conversation. And all relationship, in a way, this is where Freud is kind of right. Yeah, every relationship, in a way, is a sexual relationship. Okay, it's a sexual relationship. It's maybe sex is not the right word. It's a love relationship. There's a love relationship because you are exchanging. When I'm talking with you, you are an aspect that is outside of my membrane. Yeah, so you're like a planet, or you can also be a meteorite. And you can be a sun or a meteorite. And both are, because the meteorite brings minerals. So, well, so all relationship is a love relationship because something outside, when you're having a conversation, is informing something that you don't have inside. or you have it rarely, but in negative, in unconsciously. So that's why but we're always relating with ourselves. The sun and the planet is the same thing. It's having a relationship with itself. See? If you see how it's formed, it's the same thing. It's just cooled parts of itself. Yeah? Well, the same as our family, our etc. So, like the way that you're relating in your domestic area, okay, in your house, it's key. It's really giving you how is the level of consciousness within you occurring, you know. And if it's not with another person, it's with yourself. So there's always a relationship. Good. So I think, okay. If there's any questions you guys have, let me know, and we can maybe have a break and then go with the kind of last parts, okay? And so we could say this in the whole solar system, this would be like a kind of 0, okay? In the whole solar system. If we see it just the sun and a planet, that is like, it's more about like a 7-7. But it is nothingness would be the 7, and the totality of the system would be the other 7. Okay? So, and also think that the suns are communicating between each other, the same way the cells are communicating between each other. Like each solar system, yeah, is like a cell within this galaxy, yeah, and this galaxy is probably like a more what we call it, kind of like a more complex multicellular organism, and it's done along with other galaxies. The problem with that, it's just too far away. Like that is happening, definitely that is happening, but it's just way too much for our little humans to process. So now what we're going to do in the last part is now begin to see these antennas of the Earth have a division, an evolutionary division, and the evolutionary division it has is different functions, okay? Different functions that we are fulfilling for the planet, for the planets as antenna receivers. So we will go into that in the next part. All right. Good, my friends. And I'm not sure. Hopefully, this is the sense that's coming is like we are an interconnected part with the expansion of the consciousness of the cell of the solar system family within something greater. So life has so much more value when you're seeing it this way. It's not just like this strange thing, this chemistry thing that just went click and came up and said, "What am I doing here? I'm not sure. Let's have a good time. Oh, let's have a bad time." I think there's something deeper in being alive. And it's being an antenna for the Earth, and the Earth is an organelle, we could say, for the sun, and the planetary solar system is this kind of cell, this bubble, which is communicating with others within this galaxy, and all this is for nothingness, and through the conversation of nothingness and totality through everything, yeah? And nothingness is communicating from within each thing. This is also the beautiful thing, like nothingness is not out there, it's inside everything. So it's communicating, so there is an external reception, but there's an internal I call it, we are receiving outside, but we're also capturing from within. Yeah, the external receiving is more about existence. The internal capturing is more about insight. It's more about consciousness. It's more about, yeah, and all the dimensions are present through each thing in the universe. So isolate, another thing of the interference is the feeling of isolation. Isolation is something that isn't real. It's not real. So the perception of isolation is interference. It's just not real. It's something that is interfering with the interpretation you're giving. Okay, so I just want to kind of give you the feel of what the interference, because interference is not something that you're going to see it expressed out there, but you're going to see it expressed within you. This is very, very, very clear, very important. So, you know, to undo this interference is a self-undoing, mainly a self-undoing. So, great. Okay, let's give 10 minutes this time, 10 minutes, and we'll be back, okay? Peaky. There we are. Okay, so here we are on the third part of this fifth module, probably the last part. And now what I'd like to see is specifically these antenna receivers on the membrane of Earth, okay? In general, see them, and especially see the kind of human receiver antenna and its function. Yeah. So we've kind of seen Earth, its position in the system, in the solar system. Now, in this membrane, there has been an evolutionary process of the Earth. And the way that we can categorize, the best way, the simplest way of categorizing the different types of receivers, antennas of the membrane of of Earth is what we call the four kingdoms. Okay, the four kingdoms. Each one has evolved out of the previous one. Yeah. And you see, in this kind of, remember, this Earth connects with this past, which is sustaining in this present, and this future is kind of generating the new versions. But this past is sustaining that. It's like sustaining the base for in the present to be able to receive that sun, we can say that future, and processing new levels of consciousness. Yeah. And well, a way, you know, like the geological, what do you call it? The strata, geological strata. We can kind of divide into these kind of four kingdoms. Yeah? 1, 2. It's the same. Yeah. Why do I put it like that? Because it's kind of like from the Earth, and it's sustaining these. And the one that is most in the past is the most fundamental. The most, it's the most basic, you know, fundamental, sustaining the others. And the 1, 2, 3, 4. And the first kind of antenna receiver, the most fundamental, the most base one, the first kingdom, is what they call the mineral kingdom. The mineral kingdom, yeah. And the mineral kingdom is inorganic, okay? It's inorganic, meaning it's inert, meaning it's not what we call a living being. Okay, but this is the thing that I want to. I think that it's not a living being in the sense that it doesn't feed itself. It doesn't have a like or it's very slow. We could say a process doesn't die. That's very important. It doesn't die because it's not born, and it doesn't reproduce in the sense that a living being does. Yeah? In that reproduction, but this doesn't mean that it lacks consciousness, okay? Because actually, everything comes out of these minerals. All this kind of inorganic, So the inorganic, the inert, is from where springs out what we call a living being. And the important thing to say here about it is that it has a consciousness, and it's a base consciousness, okay? It's the least refined, but it means most fundamental, okay? Because without the mineral kingdom, which includes minerals and all the inorganic, okay, or inert beings, including water, okay, is the base from where the other kingdoms can kind of spring out. So what's important to recognize is that even though we have, let's say, the humans are the fourth, okay? But if we are, this is another thing of the interference. If we think that the fourth is more important or is superior to the first kingdom, we're making a mistranslation there, because it's not more important, not superior. What it has, it's more refined, meaning that it generates more complexity of meaning. Okay, but this doesn't mean more important or less important. It just means that it's a more refined aspect. But you can't have a refined diamond if you don't have the, like the what you call it? Here you call it en bruto. Like, okay, the raw diamond, okay? So, it's not that the mineral kingdom is not that it's inferior, it is the base. It's the base. It's where we sustain the possibility of the rest of the kingdoms. Okay? And basically we are connected to this consciousness. Yeah? We're connected, deeply connected with this consciousness. And we have to recognize that connection with this consciousness, because when we don't recognize the connection, what does 4 do? It tries to dominate that kingdom. It tries to use it, yeah. Not communicate with it. It tries to use it, dominate it. That's interference, yeah. And I'm not talking about mining or not mining. I'm saying from what perspective are we using, yeah. Because we're not really using the minerals, we are communicating with them. And actually, technology and all the communication systems we have couldn't exist without the mineral kingdom. But we, in our translation, we think that we're dominating it, we're using it for, we're establishing a communication. Okay, so this is also very important. All the kingdoms are communicating within each other for this global purpose called Earth. And specifically for the membrane, okay? So mineral kingdom, and the mineral kingdom is directly connected. It's like the first connection with the negative, okay? So, and of course we know that in the mineral we have the other levels, yeah, okay, the elements and the atoms. But all those base aspects are connected with the negative, meaning they're all connected with nothingness. So where a new version actually non-linearly actually comes through, the first thing it hits, it's the mineral kingdom. Then it receives to the human, but the human receives it from the minerals, okay? Now, what do I mean by this is like the mineral kingdom basically has 2 fundamental contributions as a consciousness, not only as a material, as a consciousness, is the ability to give physical structure, okay? So it gives like this physical structure, because the minerals end up having the first kind of organized crystalline structures. That's one very important thing. So the minerals are, this is the thing, when you are falling apart as a human identity, trust your mineral consciousness, because that's not falling apart. That is an eternal, it's sustaining you eternally with the earth. So when you are going through the biggest crisis as in your humanity aspect, okay, understand that there's always a level sustaining you, which is the earth through its minerals. And that is a pre-verbal consciousness, okay? And so the mineral consciousness, when you are like falling apart again, when you're going through one of these intense crises as a human, connect with the mineral consciousness within you. Why? Because it's stable and is directly connected with the earth and is directly linked with the negative, okay? Because the kind of negative enters into existence, it's like more from the subatomic to the rest, like that, okay? So the mineral kingdom, it gives you that stability in existence. It gives you that stability. So when you are unstable in the other kingdoms, you recognize that you are still stable in the mineral, okay? It's still sustaining you from the earth connection. Because there are moments in the crises, and the crisis is when the interference is burning, okay? And it's dying in a way. The thing that is sustaining you is this inorganic mineral consciousness. And you see, it can't die. This is one thing about the minerals, it can't die. You know, water doesn't die, it transforms, but it doesn't die. So it is the sustainer of eternity, okay? So your eternity is not in your humanity, it's in your minerals. It's like the sustainer of the eternity of consciousness, the minerals. Okay? And also another thing that the mineral kingdom does, so it gives you that stability in existence, gives you that kind of gravitational stability, and that stability with the connection with the earth. Just to tell you also, the most refined, more unstable, if it isn't in communication with its base. Because the human kingdom can die, but the minerals are still going to be here. Yeah. So that's why it's the most stable. Another thing, minerals are captures. They capture, like the water. It's a mineraloid, but still it's in the mineral kingdom, eh? Because it's inorganic and inert. It's a capture. So also when you are in a moment of capturing deeply from the emissions of space-time, you capture it with your mineral kingdom, not with your psychology, not with your interpretation. You don't capture it there. There you express it, but you don't capture it. Okay? So the mineral are giving us the stability of eternity, of gravity, of stability, in this earth, and it's giving us this capture possibility. Capture. That's, the sun is the sun. The water is a mineraloid that has a very great capacity of capturing the sun. Okay? Good. That's number one. And why do I why don't I just talk about the human directly? Because these are fundamental builders of the human. We can't really understand the human without these kingdoms. Yeah? So two, Now, 2 is what we call the plant kingdom. And the plant kingdom starts to add, because each kingdom is going to add an extra value to the previous one. Yeah? Extra value means it does something that the previous one couldn't do. Now, something that the plant kingdom is going to be able to do is not only capture sun consciousness or sunlight, but remember that behind that light there's consciousness. Okay, it doesn't only capture it; it can synthesizes it. So it can process it into. It can use it into particular consciousness. So, like the photosynthesis. It's this process where it makes luminic energy into chemical energy. And the thing about chemical energy is that the plant can kind of use it for itself. Okay. So this is the thing that the plant begins to do. It doesn't only capture it, it can process it and use it for itself. Okay. So it can begin, the particular consciousness can take that and use it in its individuality. Something that the mineral couldn't do. The mineral can just capture, but not process. It couldn't convert it, you see? We could also say that the light of the sun is non-linear in the sense that it's all the bands of frequency in the same moment. It's non-linear. But for us to be able to use it, we have to process it linearly. So we could say that is like the same mechanism. It's transforming light energy into chemical energy, and we can process that aspect, that little range of consciousness within an individual antenna. Can you guys see that? So when you want to process something, it connects with the plant kingdom in you. Yeah, when you want to process something, like when you want to transform that thing that you've captured, but you want to process it for you to be able to translate it into your individual energy consciousness, you connect dialogue with the plant kingdom in you. Okay, this is not a romantic thing, right? This is not like a poetry kind of thing. It can, of course, you can have a deep love connection with these kingdoms, but it's not poetry in the sense that it's reality. It's real. It's like it is actually what they do for you. Yeah. So, and don't try to process with the psychological human mind, because it's not a good processor, because it interprets, it gives interpretations. The good thing of the plant is that it processes it, it translates it without interpretation. So it comes more pure. Can you see that, guys? Yeah? Now, the plant is good at processing and all that, but then there's going to be a third kingdom that's going to give it another, what would you call it, animal. Also, the plant gives us this, what we've captured, it puts it into internal movement. Chemistry is like a movement inside, isn't it? Yeah, the chemicals, the chemistry. So it kind of gives it makes that which is being captured, it synthesizes it, and it allows it to move inside you. You see? Good. Now the animal kingdom, what it adds, the value it adds to the plant kingdom is the ability of moving. Okay, of movement. So it has this action where it can move. It's not just like fixed in one place. So what and also the animal kingdom can move, and it can also, in a way, like eat the plants, which which already did the process, the photosynthesis process. But probably what is good about connecting with what the animal kingdom in the communication that we have with the animal kingdom is this instinct to know where to move in space, okay? Because now, plants is an inner movement, it's a chemical movement, but animal is an outer movement. It's like, okay, it's where I move outside. So it gives you this, where to move outside, yeah, and where to move outside to do this capture, to capture, because we're not only capturing we're capturing from each other, and to synthesize that. And then we have the human kingdom. Now the human kingdom is going to do something that the animal kingdom can't do. And it is to, it can, because the animal kingdom receives a signal and reacts to the signal, okay? It has an instinct reaction. Now, the human can do something or the human, I think the human is not something that is closed, it's like, it's something that is still kind of maturing itself, but basically one of the most important contributions that the human have as an antenna is this capacity of, when the signal comes, it can separate, and instead of reacting, it can do a reflection. Okay, so it can reflect. It can do, it can see what is captured. You see, it can see what is captured, and something that the human kingdom can do is it can administrate the other three within itself and outside. It can administrate. It can it can see where the instinct wants to move, and it can administrate that movement. It can administrate how it processes it. It can administrate the minerals. So it has this capacity. The animals can't do that, really. Like, the animals are just capturing it. It's a receiving, reacting, receiving, reacting, receiving, reacting. Where the humans can receive, they can create this separation and look at what they receive. And when they look at that receipt, they can administrate it. So the humans give the capacity of self-awareness. So they have the capacity within this of, I just lost the word there. Modeling. They can establish models of movement. Yeah, so they can establish a model. They can, like, say, okay, I know that the animal wants to go there, okay? But let me see if I can establish a model. Let me see if I can, sorry, this is what I want. The human brings the possibility of interpretation, okay? Interpretation and projection. Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? Is that this is a neutral capacity, okay? It's not a good thing, it's not a bad thing. The thing is how it's used. As humans, we have interpretations, meaning we are giving sense. We're establishing meaning. We're establishing meaning to what's happening. Okay? So this is something that it's not that it doesn't occur in the animal, but it's just a lot more obvious in the human kingdom. Yeah? So we are able to establish, like, self-reflect, and understand something, create a model, and administrate my movements, how I process that in my I can have a relationship with the chemistry in me, the plant kingdom, and I can administrate that. The problem is when the human is disconnected from the others, it doesn't want to administrate it, or communicate with it, it wants to dominate it. Here's the problem. When it wants to dominate its animal, it wants to dominate its vegetable, and it wants to dominate its mineral. There we have something that is a distortion, because you see, domination is not communication. So when we are repressing our chemistry inside, yeah, we're not administrating it, we're dominating it. When we are dominating, you know, the minerals outside, we could say, then things get out of balance. So you see, the more refined a kingdom is, the more it depends on its basis. You see? So look, the human can do what the animal, plant, and minerals can do. Okay? So it has more reach. But the human depends on the animal, on the vegetable, and the mineral. So it means that it's less necessary. So the human has more reach of meaning, but it's less necessary. Can you see how that works? So is that what I want to establish here is that there is a hierarchy going on here, but it's not a domination hierarchy. It's a communication hierarchy. Communication. So what is happening between the kingdoms is that we're establishing different functions of the antenna receiver on the membrane of the earth. And there's something that we have to be, it's communicating all these together, okay? Now, the fifth kingdom, there's no fifth kingdom really, but there is a fifth dimension, which is like, or fifth level of consciousness, which hasn't become a kingdom yet, okay? And that is, you see, humans can do that self-reflection, and they can establish an interpretation and administrate their movements, the chemistry, and okay, they can do all that. But now, you see, the one that's going to be able to interconnect them is not the human. The human can't really interconnect them. It can administrate, but not interconnect or interconnect. That's going to come from this fifth, you know, the fifth level of consciousness that hasn't become a kingdom yet, okay, which is the logical impersonal vision, yeah. And the whole thing of it becoming a kingdom, I have no idea. I don't even want to go into that because I'm not sure. It's pure speculation. But what I do see is that now the humans, or what we're beginning to have is, when we are doing this self-reflection on ourselves, on, you know, what we're capturing, we can see it through a logic. We can do a logical structural scan. Okay, but that is not coming from the human really. That's coming from another level. Okay, because humans, what they can do is self-reflect, but they do it in analysis. They do it with the contents. You see, that's what humans are very good. They're very good at using contents. But we haven't been too good at reading like the logical view. Now we are, I think we're opening to this, because what happens with 5, the fifth dimension, what it does, it's the impersonal consciousness which can see the interrelation between the other dimensions. Okay? It's the logic of how they all interconnect. You see, and this is what the human is needing to not self-destruct itself. Yeah. So it's needing something that is not human, really. It's not in. Yeah. Okay. So, so now let's go with the human, right? Let's look at the human, which is the most refined antenna receiver of the Earth. but it's the less significant. The less, sorry, not the less significant, the less fundamental, okay? The most fundamental is the mineral. Yeah, that's the most fundamental, because you can't have organic life without inorganic elements. That's why I say that the mineral kingdom is what sustains the eternity of consciousness through existence. It's that base there, this one. Yeah? And it's not about this, you know, I think the spirituality have sensed this importance of the mineral, but then they overdo it with the romanticism and things like that. And I don't think we have to make it too poetic. I think we have to make it literal. Like the connection is literal in our bodies with this. Like, we don't need mineral souvenirs and things like that, okay? We can use them, okay, you know, but we don't have to cover our room with minerals. We are minerals, okay? So yeah, okay. Now, have you guys followed up to this point? Okay, so, excellent. So the ability of capturing it, and the stability in existence, mineral kingdom. The ability of processing, synthesizing that to make that, because when it captures, it's impersonal. But when it synthesizes, it is expressed within the personal. Okay? The animal can take that and move. Yeah? And what the human can do is self-reflect on it. Okay, so it can look at it and it can create designs. That's why the human is so good at it's so good, but in its disconnection, it makes a lot of mistakes. But one of the things that humans do very good is establishing models. You see, establishing models which are very efficient, and it's something that and why are they good at doing that? Because they can self-reflect. And they can make an interpretation, do a projection, and administrate that. Yeah. Now the thing is that they're doing that only for their own personal benefits, because they're missing this fifth impersonal dimension. That's the one that's coming in. That's the one that's kicking in to kind of make us realize, okay, no, it's not about domination. It's not about you know. It's not about on top of the food chain kind of thing. It's about communication, okay? And the human is an extra value to the rest of the kingdoms. It's not a superior, it's an extra value. It means we are human plus plant kingdom plus animal plus, so we are all that. We're not dominating that, you see, because that gives a disconnect. That gives a dissociation. So we have to differentiate, but we have to be careful with the dissociation with it. Good. So, and what the humans specifically are going to be. Okay, I'm just gonna, because all this is going to be important to receive the future. You see. Yeah. But the maximum future has to connect with the maximum past. Remember that, guys? You guys that have followed the information of Alejandra from the beginning is that the maximum future of the Earth connects with the maximum past. Well, what's in the maximum past? The mineral kingdom. And when it's so, the maximum past connects with the maximum future, and then it's where, you know, in a way we can translate it in, like, okay, we capture it, we synthesize it, we can begin to move outside with it, and we can we can self-reflect, administrate it. But so sometimes I say, the mineral, the plant and the animal, because there's a difference between translating something and interpreting something. Okay, translating is just, it's in the present moment. You're translating all, you know, it's like right now, I'm translating the temperature, I'm translating the pressure, the oxygen, many things, okay, many things, but I'm translating it. But the best translator is not the human is the terrible translator. The best translator is the mineral, the plant, and the animal, especially the mineral and the plant, okay? The human, what it does, it receives that translation, pure translation, without interpretation, pure translation from the minerals, and from there it establishes an interpretation. That's where its interpretation and its projection, its calculation, has this legitimate, it's contained by the legitimate elements of the earth. So we translate through that. Translation is something that is, it's a description, you know. We describe it through these kingdoms, and then we receive it in the human. And what does the human do very well? It self-reflects on it, and it gives an interpretation. It creates a model and a project, and establishes a kind of a possibility of organizing its movements in time, etc. Okay. That's why we created calendars and all that. It's something that the animal kingdom, it's not something that the animal kingdom does. You see, it doesn't create models of projection interpretation. Humans does. Now, but the humans require this fifth consciousness coming in to be able to connect with its, you know, self-awareness, but from an impersonal view. So impersonal means it can see the logic that connects with the rest of the things. Good. And we can literally use these resources in us. Like when you are overwhelmed, okay, mineral, I become a rock. I just leave it to the minerals to capture, plants to process. You know, when you've read a lot of things, like you've read a lot of information, or when, like after this talk, you know, and you're capturing with your minerals, if you want to synthesize it, you know, let the plant kingdom in you do it. Yeah. So you don't use the human interpretation, which is interfering in the synthesis when synthesizing it. You trust the ability of the plant kingdom in you. Okay. And then you're going to have this, you see that animal smell? You're going to know where to move. But the human is going to administrate that movement in a more kind of efficient way. So I have to go there. How do I go there? And the human's going to, okay, I can catch this plane. This is one's better. Okay, it can administrate. But if you can't smell where to go, you know what I mean? It's like your movement is not appropriate, it's not pertinent. Yeah? Good. Now let's go with the last part. At least for me, this module is one of the most beautiful ones because, or this moment of explanation for me, because it's where all this kind of, you know, like kind of abstraction just kind of begins to hit the concrete. You know, this abstraction begins to make sense. It gives sense out of the concrete. Yeah. So no, I'm not sure. I think it's just it warms the cells of my body. And okay, so now the human, like another thing I like to see about the human is if we take the earth as a full organism, okay? You see a full organism has many different systems. Like let's use the human organism. It has the digestive system, it has the nervous system, the blood circulating system, etc. So it's got all these systems which are made out of organs, which are made out of cells, which are working for the the functioning, the integral functioning of this organism. Okay. Well, the Earth is the same. Okay. And you see in the membrane, like we could kind of say, you know, when we see the trees are kind of doing like, they're like lung cells, we could say, and the oceans and the rivers and how they, you know, it's like the circulation system, the rocks and it's like our bones. Our bones are mainly like minerals, you know, giving us that stability and existence, you know. Because without a skeleton, we'll be just floppy doppy. So we got that stability, etc. Okay. So and now the human kind of kingdom, what it's very good at. Okay. A part of this, you know, self-reflection, all that. What it's good at together with that is the following. What we do very good as a species is exchange information. Okay, we exchange information very, very good. And what system? What system does that? The nervous system. The nervous system. And what does the nervous system use to transfer that information? It uses electricity. Yeah. So this is something that us humans are doing. So it's kind of like us humans are like neuron cells. Okay. So in this global organism and this global brain, we're like neuron cells. Okay. Exchanging information, using electricity. Okay, mainly, which is okay. And so we're using this not only electricity really, because you know the brain is this, the nervous system is this receiving, emitting, you know, signals. But that's what we do very good as humans. Yeah. And if you look at the nervous system, how it's structured, it's got what we call the central nervous system, okay, which is mainly the brain and the spinal cord, and that's the central nervous system. And then it's got the peripheral nervous system, which is kind of like it's in the outer parts of that central nervous system. So like the central nervous system is the center of communications, and the peripheral is capturing more other specific things, and they all feeding it back to the central nervous system. Yeah, like branches all feeding it back to the roots, that kind of way. Yeah, so the roots is kind of like the central nervous system, and the branch is kind of more the peripheral nervous system. So if we look at Earth, we've got like in the center of the Earth, and then we've got the equator here. Yeah, and I see this kind of like the central nervous system, and the equator is latitude 0, isn't it? You know, 0 is like this connector of all the aspects. Latitude 0, yeah, an equator. And each antenna is all connected to this kind of common center. Yeah? But it is in the peripheral aspect. Yeah? So what I see the humans kind of like is the nervous system. It's like neuron cells of the peripheral nervous system, which the peripheral nervous system is the one that's more capturing an environment. Yeah, and then that is processed in the center, in the heart of that system. And it's like all those leaves of the branches receiving all that and taking it, and with the roots having that exchange. And so and there's, if you see how the nervous system, how it kind of if you see a baby and how the baby is maturing its nervous system, it has this process that is very similar to the human history. It's very, very similar. Like one thing that the nervous system does, or the nerve cells do, is that in the peripheral aspects of the central nervous system, is that it tries to connect all different parts of the body. Okay. That for me is one big clue also. Like it tries to, that nerve connecting the whole organ, it tries to touches all the areas, okay? And what have humans done? They have positioned themselves all over the planet. Like it's definitely the species that is more all over the place, okay? And then also, it has two phases, the growth of the nervous system. One, which the first phase, it's multiply and extend. So it does very, very fast multiplications, and it tries to place itself in all areas of that organism. Okay, because why? Because it wants to connect. It wants to establish a net of interconnection. But that's the first phase. It multiplies, and it's like going all over the place. It's touching all the areas. It's like, but then there's a moment that stops, like it stops the multiplication and extension, because it's already, basically it's got the number of cells it needs, and it's extended to all the areas that it had to touch. And then the second stage occurs. And that second stage is not about multiplying and extending. It's about maturing its interconnectivity. It's more about how the cells connect with each other. You see, and I feel that this is a very good analogy of the human situation, where it has extended itself all over the planet, and it has established a very, very quick lineal ways of communication. One example is that I'm in Argentina and you guys are in other places, and we are being able to exchange information. Okay, this is a very good example of it. Okay, lineally. Okay, because we've sacrificed more the non-linear, which I think that's something that's going to come. But okay, and we establishing these nets of interconnectivity, internet, I think year 2000 it's a big importance in this new phase of the human development. And I'll talk about that with the numbers and all that stuff. But for you to see that, because I also want to understand is not only that we're human, is that what parts of the human stage are we at? And I believe we are in this threshold between this phase of multiplication and extension, which is still happening, but we're beginning to lap onto another stage, which is interconnecting that nervous system. Yeah, because that's very efficient for Earth to have these receivers, that are capturing, and because this is what the central nervous system does. It captures from the environment and it feeds it to the center. That gives back a response, okay? And that is a communication with the sun and all the other planets. And so the human is doing this, yeah. But now it's not only that the human is establishing technological connectivity, which is lineal, it's also established, it's beginning to recognize, I'm not sure how much you guys in your life are seeing this, but for me it's becoming more and more obvious that the one moving our asses here is Earth. It's like, the Earth is really the one that is moving all the pieces around. And it's just, I can see it with the synchronicities. And what is a synchronicity? It's not this magical thing. It's the central consciousness is organizing the interrelationship between its elements. You know, it does seem very magical. It does seem very incredible because it comes from a dimension that we're not conscious of. Because it comes from a global dimension, an impersonal dimension. You know? And we're beginning to become aware of how that is happening. You know, and there's so many examples. You know, there's so many examples of that happening in my life, in geopolitics. Probably you guys are also, you know, going through those synchronicities, yeah. And I wouldn't give it a magical aspect because it's not understanding the fundamental logic behind the synchronicity. We could say it is the Earth. Let's take the Earth for now. It's the Earth establishing a relationship because it has a purpose for the global. So it's not me, David, saying I'm going to meet Peter today. Okay, in one level, it's David meeting Peter, but it's the Earth saying I need these two neurons to connect because they're going to create an idea. They're going to establish something. Yeah, this is because, you know, we are smelling it, you know, but it's still very much unconscious how that, you know, how that's happening. But there is purpose in many of these relationships, and numbers are a very good language through where we can become conscious of this incredibly intelligent connectivity of the Earth. It's like numbers gives us the perfume, in a way, of, you know, like where the human can see, wow, there's this whole other intelligence moving so many things around, you know, this other level of consciousness, I would say. This other level of consciousness, which is the global consciousness, Earth, is having a relationship with, like the same way my central nervous system is relating with all the elements of my body. Well, the same thing, that central nervous, that central consciousness of the Earth is connecting with all the antennas and all the, yeah. And we are doing this dialogue of what's outside of the Earth, because, you know, that its environment, and connecting with what we're receiving, from what we can receive from the, you know, the processing of sun consciousness, which we understand this in science, but as energy. It's like how we are capturing, processing that energy. But it's not only energy. See, that's the very important thing. It's not only energy. It's consciousness, which and the Earth has a role within this family it belongs to. Yeah. And this bubble, this interstellar cell, is having a communication with other levels, which I don't think it's necessary to go into, but we are definitely connected with that. Yeah. Alejandra talks a lot about that this is way beyond my capturing, but there's a big relationship between apparently our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, and Andromeda. And Andromeda is kind of like, in the way that it's in a way educating. It's like maturing this Milky Way galaxy. There's an education going on there. Yeah, like if it was like you know, when you have a baby and you take care of it, you know, until it matures, and then it transcends you. Okay, thank you, Alice. Yeah, we'll be finishing now also, but the recording will be available. Okay. And Andromeda. Okay, this is way beyond. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Take care, Alice. It resonates, but you know, I do see my limitation. Okay, so that's what I feel like. The human is this kind of neuron, which is just establishing a peripheral nervous system, maturing a peripheral nervous system. And if you see the evolution, like if you see the history of time and you compare it to how the nervous system is developed, there's a great similarity. Probably the human with the added ingredients of interference. That's why also the human is kind of also seen as a cancer cell. It's also got this kind of like, what does a cancer cell apparently do? I think on one level there is cancer cells that do that, right? Which is disconnect their communication with the rest of the organism and multiply without that. So I think it's like these two possibilities of humanity, neuron maturing the nervous system and or developing into a self-destructive cancer, we could say. And I think both of them are on the table. I believe both of them are on the table. We're going to have to go through, I believe, in my personal life, I've seen challenges emerge, very, very deep challenges, coming from the interference and being vomited out. And what happens in the individual happens in the collective. So I believe there could be the great challenges collectively. I think we can smell them. It's already bringing the smell of that challenge, isn't it? But I think we also, I think from this position, we have an area of responsibility but our responsibility is not to become the earth, in the sense that we're trying to save the earth, and I think that is a misconception. It's allow the earth to save us, but we have to do our part in our own domestic, the reach of our own responsibility. And there is a reach of individual responsibility. So to say that the earth is in the kind of doing it, okay, yes, that is very true, and that's it's going to give you a lot of calm, because you know that there's this other vast consciousness, but you do have a responsibility in your specific role. It's like the cell of the lung that is getting, is doing that capture of oxygen has to do its function. It has an individual responsibility. Okay, but it hasn't got a global reach, so it has to also calm down its, this I'm going to save the world kind of thing. And I notice it a lot with people that are very much understanding, probably more in a material way, but still understanding this urgency occurring, that we really have to change our relationship with the earth. For me, in materially, but also in our consciousness. But they are very much kind of like, if they think it's like the savior of the planet depends on like they're confusing their position, and they get very, very frustrated and very, very kind of like angry, very, very unbalanced. Really, they get very unbalanced because you see they're confusing their responsibility. They can't see their area of individual responsibility, which can touch community areas and things like that. But what I'm saying is that they're trying to be the earth when they're not. They are aspects of the earth, and I think this gives them a lot of anxiety. They have a lot of anxiety. And you can see, I'm going to like this course, which is about plastic recycling. I'm going there for consciousness reasons. I'm not, it's not only a thing of, which there is definitely a plastic problem, but you know, there's other reasons that are taking me, but I think it's just really interesting to understand. I think plastic is something really interesting to understand because it has to do with the characteristics of the interference of the human. So, you know, there's something about plastic and understanding plastic that I think, at least at this point in my life, I think it's very important. But what I notice when I go there is that there's this anxiety. You know, there's this hate, there's this anger, there's this, for me, unbalance, really, in a point. You know, I can notice it, and there's a bit of aggressive, you know, underneath there. And I can see that they are understanding the issue coming, but they're not understanding their position in the issue coming. They're not understanding their position. Their position is relative. It's not absolute, you know. So they're taking responsibility, but they're taking too much responsibility. So they're confusing, like, you know, it's like, let's say this, you know, I'm not sure, it's like kind of like the wave trying to move the ocean. It's going to get frustrated. It's like, it's just not going to be, it has to link with the ocean, you know? So I do notice that. So in the next kind of module, now we're going to go more into the human, and we're going to begin to go into, you know, the human on the earth, and begin to see what we call the calendar numbers, the human language. The human language, which comes and it's in direct communication with something which is the earth language, yeah. But there's something in the language, in the sense of, you know, because this is another thing that humans do, is that they can make sense out of things. So they have a language to explain things. Okay, the animals don't have that. So we have something to explain where I want to go, you know, how I'm processing, like it's giving the interpretation. So there's language there, there's code language. And I want to go into the numbers, especially, maybe a bit into not only numbers, but also letters. And I want to see that numbers is kind of like a very good code of seeing how Earth, at least, Earth is interconnected. How it's interconnecting itself, yeah. So it's like, it's a good language of seeing the multi-dimensional connection occurring. Seeing what we call continents, seeing what we call countries, seeing what we call the birth date of a receiver, very important, and just seeing things like that through this number system, which is 0 to 9, isn't it? No? It's all made out of 0 to 9, and we've got the sun, and we've got 9 planets, yeah, 10 fingers. So, and the first finger has to be 0. You see the children, they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, it's a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Because if not, they don't have that 0 connected. You know? So another thing I wanted to say, I'm going to leave it on the recording because of other people, that for those who, because I was thinking also that there's 2 things I would also like to share with you guys. One thing which is called what we call the feminine calendar, another one is called the feminine calendar, the ring of fire, and something which we call the Tumi. Okay? Of course, in this course, I'm not going to look into those things because it's just way too much. It doesn't make sense to look into those things. But I am planning of doing a second kind of course for those who resonate, who would like to go deeper into these things. And it's only going to be for the people that have participated in this course, because without these understandings, the other thing is like, it's like Chinese. It just wouldn't make sense at all. So it wouldn't make sense to invite other people and all that. It would be basically you guys that have been resonating, who've been following this, who've been assimilating this. And if you want to go, I'm going to do a second kind of extension with these three things. Yeah. And I was to see the how I calculated for you guys. I thought, okay, I'm going to give September off and do it in October, November, December. Okay, like in and we'll do it the same way, the last Sunday of each month. But really, in 3 months, it's not enough. And I would like to finish it this year. So basically, I'm going to do it in September. So I'm not going to give you guys, whoever wants to participate in the second extended course. It's going to be 4 months. It just has to be. It couldn't be less. So it'll be September, October, November, December. The last Sunday, maybe December, we can talk about it. Whatever fits all you guys, because the last Sunday, I'm not sure how good it'll be. But we can talk about it. And when I say feminine calendar, the Ring of Fire, and the Tumi, it's something that you're not going to really understand it until the next two modules. But basically, it's a way of understanding what a year means, what our relationship with a year means. Yeah, it's just a model. It's a model of administrating our relationship with a year. Okay, it's a model. See, that's something that us humans do very good. We create models. So it's a model of administrating the year, and it's also something that makes us understand, the Tumi especially, makes us understand the key moments of the human development, which has stages of development as a species, but also as an individual. And that's more the Tumi and the stages of the human development. But so I just wanted to communicate to now for there to be plenty of time if you guys want to kind of, organize yourselves. I will be giving a description, but again, especially for the people who are new, they're going to understand it better with the next two modules, what that is all about. Okay, but I am going to be doing that, and it just kind of felt like, okay, because a lot of you guys probably with this, it's enough, and it's a lot. And okay, it's kind of, you have nurtured your thirst, but maybe some people want to go more into this understanding, especially understanding our administration of what a year is. Yeah, it's basically going to be talking about that. So guys, I really enjoyed this module. I really enjoyed it. At least it just kind of, I enjoy all of them, to be honest. I love them. But this one is just, it just connects to reality. I'm not sure, it starts to connect into, something more closer to our experience kind of thing. But from a very different point of view, from a different perspective. So we started with establishing a new perspective, universal perspective, and that's moving us to a global logic, which is convergent. What does convergent mean? Yeah? Convergent means to converge all this to the same global system, to converge in the same center. We're all working in the same team, we're all having a function within this global consciousness. So it's a global convergent logic. But for that to understand the global convergent logic, we have to establish a universal perspective. of the unfoldment of space-time, we could say. And now we're going to move into a kind of a third thing, which is connected with this, which is what we call space-time structures. Which we're already seeing, really. These are space-time structures, aren't they? So guys, now hopefully you're capturing with your mineral kingdom. Now when you switch off, rest in your mineral kingdom, allow the plant kingdom to do the photosynthesis, which is a selection. And then you'll begin to smell your next move and use the human to administer that move and to see it from a global logic. Yeah? So, well, thanks a lot.
Bye. Even dag zeggen.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye to all.
Okay, bye, Gabby.
Bye.
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 Bye. Bye.
Bye.